All right. Agenda items. I added my stuff already. Just want to give everyone a minute here. If there's something they want to throw on the agenda items, then let's just add it right now here at the top before we start diving into stuff. Yeah, does anyone have anything they want to add?
I don't think that we have anything from our side. More specifically, we're interested in the in the first point, so I guess we didn't need to add anything more. But yeah, we can talk afterwards on any urgent topics. Maybe we can help out with. But yeah, I think it's better to go over the points, and yeah, maybe we can discuss afterwards.
Okay, cool. Then yeah, the two agenda items are just I added starting a next release of version 7.13 and just kind of briefly going over recently merged PRs. And then Derek was just hoping on any updates from you on like how the Broadcom to CF migration stuff is going and everything. No pressure on if it's a no up update, it's a no up update. That's fine. But yeah, so I guess with those agenda items, I'll kick it off with, yeah, I want to kind of start the next release train for version 7.13. As you guys noted at the top of the call, I've been busy for the past month, so there's a bunch of stuff that has been merged in, and it's already a bit more than I would comfortably have liked to shove in one release. But feeling good about it. It's mostly just like updating stuff, like just kind of just kicking the cobwebs off of things, fixing up little long outstanding bugs here and there and stuff. So that's most of it. There isn't like major like functionality changes or anything. I think the only big one is actually a PR from another person in the community who added like a privilege mode to Containerd. So that's one of the like cool like call out features that'll be in the next release. Other than that, some of the other big PRs that kind of come to mind was just swapped out the Postgres driver that we're using from P-SQL, which is in like a very, very low active like maintenance mode right now, and switched it over to PGX, which is much more like actively maintained, and the Go community seems to rally around that one a lot more. So just swap that out was mostly painless. There was like one little thing that I had to write up to replace the P-SQL specific functionality that PGX didn't have. But it seems to be working fine, seems pretty robust and everything. So it's been looking good. We've at least been running it internally, me and my colleagues on our internal cluster, and haven't been having any issues after making that change. So we're feeling pretty good about that one. Thankfully, like everything is still just behind the like Go SQL interface. So that one's all good. The other really interesting one that I want to call out as well was the UUID library that we were using to generate UUIDs for containers and volumes. That UUID library, I'm guessing, was probably the very first one that like the people making Concourse just like reached out, grabbed it. They were like, well, this one looks like it should work.
UIDs.
Little, yeah, little did we know that this library did not implement UID correctly, and there would be UID collisions. So we had a collision in our own cluster, and I scratched my head at that initially. I was just like, "That's weird," and I was like, "Could it be an issue with UID collisions?" I was like googling UID collisions, and people were like, "You're more likely to die from a gamma ray hitting your brain than like a UID collision occurring, right?" So I was just like, "Then it can't be that." And then I dove into the dependency a little bit. And sure enough, one of the like issues from literally 10 years ago, 2015, someone reported like, hey, this library bad, UID collisions, don't use it. And I was like, okay, cool. So yeah, UID collisions. So UID collisions goes to the machine for literally all versions of Concourse prior to this next release. Thankfully, super easy swap out with one maintained by Google. So that one
Turns
should
out
be
even
all
if you
good.
get it wrong, it's still hard to run into it consistently.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that one. Uh, yeah, that was the other like, wow, can't believe we've had this one just sitting in here. It's probably been like every like weird kind of error that people have seen that we've seen that we're just like, what? That doesn't make any sense. How would that happen? But yeah, so replace that. Feel really good about that one because there's probably like a long lingering ghost just gone from the code now. And yeah, those are kind of the just at least like kind of the big call outs that I want to mention. That's kind of the stuff that's making me excited, at least to like get a new release out. Kind of, really going for stability here. And I think we're hitting the mark, even though there have been a lot of like big changes going on.
Nice, definitely. And as soon as that release comes out, I guess we can start testing the next version in a Bosch environment and in a quite big scale, because our landscapes are not small thing. I think I mentioned in the previous meeting, but yeah, we have a landscape with over 25,000 jobs and 2,000 pipelines running. So yeah, we can definitely give it a good stress test.
Perfect. Yeah, that's the only thing that like we're definitely kind of missing here is like a stress testing environment. I know the like the previous like team at Pivotal and stuff, we had like Hush House and stuff. Derek, I actually don't even know if Hush House is still a thing or if it's even kicking
No,
around.
Hush House itself has been. We have a different scale environment. It's not owned by the team that runs Concourse anymore.
Yeah, there was, I remember VMware had Runway as well. I had talked with those folks during the acquisition as well.
Yeah.
Is that guy still kicking around?
Not that, I don't know if it's org structures split and things
Yeah,
and whatnot.
I know.
Right. But
It was a
so
different
it's no
org.
longer available to us. We have a different instance that plays a similar style, but it's obviously less in scale because it's not serving, it's serving Tanzu rather than the full of what was VMware, right? Or at least attempting to. So it's smaller in scale, but still pretty large, right? Like it's meaningfully sized. But yeah. Regardless, I don't have that will not be a quick fast follow update into their systems, I guess is what I want to say, because they're an arm removed from us,
Yeah.
and not necessarily easy to make those same kind of updates quickly and handle them as a result. Yeah,
Okay, yeah.
definitely interested in the scale aspect for some of these things. Question tailors and folks that's excited for the new version. I'm wondering, as we start kicking these things out, right, like what the desire is for maintaining certain lines for folks to use, right, versus like a fast forward, like something that's always like releasing, right? And I think we want to have the ability for both of those things, but I'm interested in what the appetite for that stable channel, right, that maybe gets some patches for some amount of time versus like the forced upgrade cycles, right, of like, look, we're going to go 7.13, maybe 1 to 2 patches, but then 7.14 is like 2 months later or 3 months later or whatever, 6 months later. And I'm wondering if this group and folks have different desires for that, or
Yeah,
well
me
formed.
per
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I'll give my thing quick and then Hristo,
Yeah.
I'll pass it to you. Yeah, my thing is mostly I just want to be focused on just like what's coming next. Maintaining an old version, that's an ongoing maintenance burden.
Sure.
Me personally, if someone's going to pay me to maintain an old version, by all means,
Sure.
I'll maintain it. We can talk about pricing and all that kind of stuff if we
Mhm.
want to do something like that, because I know like that is always a thing that people want. I remember back to like again when it was part of Pivotal and stuff, we did have like a version, I think 6.8 or 7 was like kind of like the
Both of
LTS
those at some
version
point in
that we
time.
had. Yeah, and then I think we tried to make 7.5 or 6 like the LTS and stuff, and then stuff probably got just lost in translation through the acquisitions and stuff. But yeah, I know, yeah, people will probably want that stuff. It'll just be like, yeah, who wants to put the engineering time to make that happen? The release branches are always there. It's just a matter of just maintaining the pipelines for them and stuff and staying up to date on it. That's my piece on that.
From our side, at least, I don't think that we actually need an old version, because even at the moment we are on 7.11.2, and usually we try to upgrade to the latest release because of various pro standard security standards, etc. So we mainly focus to upgrade to the latest stable version. So yeah, that's our whole goal. And for the patch versions, I would guess, at least in my head, what's happening is if there is a specific breaking change, something which needs to be adopted, yeah, fine, we can do a patch version, or a security fix which is quite urgent. Yeah, that seems like a reasonable thing. At least I'm again speaking from my perspective. But for major releases and maintaining old releases, I don't see any reason from our side. I would much prefer to upgrade, and even if there is some breaking change, adopt what's needed, and yeah, overall find a way to adopt it. It's much better to go with the newer approach. It brings many features as well, which we also need. That's my take on it.
Kalin, you have your hand raised there.
Yes, so just to add, because I didn't hear it, so for me, security fixes, they're most likely going in a new minor release, or even if it's something breaking, then it can be a major release or whatever. For me, I think that the only real need for a patch bug fix version would be some kind of regression introduced from our code, which would be a lack of testing or something else. But in most cases, so as you mentioned, without paying for support, it doesn't make sense to have it unless we do some really odd specific regression that needs to be fixed in a version. That's my point of view.
So what I think I'm hearing is most folks are comfortable with the idea of generally consuming forward releases as the strategy for the way that they're using Concourse. And I think that's fine. I think that's reasonable. I do want to think about right now all the features and things that are going in right now are like very reasonably minor changes, like this thinking about the scale of a change right between what will start to make things minor versus major when we haven't like done any intentional breaking changes, right? So that's I think that's correct and good. As
I,
we start to get into some of those phases, I think that'll be interesting. Go ahead.
I think actually the only at the moment from my perspective for 7.13 is when you have a rolling update with FIPS, then after the initial web is recreated and the second hasn't been migrated, so the migration hasn't passed for the second one, then this would be a minor breaking change, let's say, until the rolling update completes. But that's something that
FIPS. You said for FIPS, right?
Yeah, the FIPS compliance. So there's
Yeah.
a small database migration of renaming some tables in the database, but I think all database migrations in Concourse so far have been done exactly like that. So it's nothing new for the community, I guess.
Okay, so the migration applies to everyone.
Yep.
It's and that makes sense. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Advise in the release notes seems reasonable, and that's true for just about any database migration, such as the moment.
Yeah. Actually, I guess, and very technically, there is actually one breaking change with the environment flags that Concourse is aware of because of the switch from pSQL to PGX. There was the previous release, I believe it was 7.12, someone added I think it was called binary options or something like that, which was this feature specific to the pSQL driver. But switching to PGX, it became like obviously PGX has a similar option, not with that exact name and not the same settings, but like a similar like flag that does a similar feature. But from my research, I don't think it would be necessary, at least for the use case it was around with the PG bouncer and stuff. But so technically there will be one flag disappearing. Probably not a lot
They
of
would have
people
had to
using that one.
adopt it in 7.12, which
Exactly.
has been pretty recent and probably unlikely. Not a high volume use case for folks.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's like pretty niche, and even like the whole reason was added for like PG bounce users, which isn't even something we like explicitly like support. It's very much a best effort thing. But yeah, but that'll be probably the only thing that I just have top of mind to be like, okay, this is technically a breaking change, so that'll end up in the release notes as a very minor breaking change there. But that's it. All right. But sorry, Derek, anything else you wanted to discuss around like long-term support version or anything like
No,
that?
I think that's reasonable. I just wanted to make sure that folks were aligned on that idea and that we weren't, causing had different expectations than that, and that's totally fine. Because again, for us, like the way that we use those things, using those release branches to your point, and then maintaining them as is necessary, and then doing upgrades between those versions is and then picking the next one, that's totally fine. And not a problem. So yep, all good.
Cool. The only other thing I also just want to call out for the next release is like obviously it's going to be using Go 1.24. That's what we'll be compiling with. So yay, little performance improvements from that as well. So lots of little things. All right, I think that's all I have to say about the first agenda item. Thankfully, it's a short agenda.
On probably one question on this: what are we targeting as a time frame in which we can expect 7.13? Do you know maybe when it's possible to release it? Just the question, nothing special.
Yeah, the at least like timeline I'm having in my head right now is the next like 1 to 2 weeks. The outstanding items I have to go through are the resource types. There are like a bunch of lingering issues with them, and I have like completely neglected them while I've been focusing on like the main repo. So I need to go through and get through them. I know there are some like outstanding bugs that like need to be fixed in a couple of them. So I just got to spend some time going through them, testing them, and merging in like some PRs and stuff on there, and probably making a couple small fixes myself. And then yeah, I think that's the only one off the top of my head. I think there's a second item, but I can't remember right now. But yeah, that's kind of going to be what's taking up the chunk of that time, and why it'll take a little bit of time there as well.
Taylor, for the 7.13, would you mind if you and I paired a little bit on doing that as a like joint? I think we've each individually cut some releases separately from one another.
Yeah.
And I wonder if we could, especially on like the since we want to make this a more regular cadence thing, make sure it's just like a really uninteresting thing. Let me put it this way. An uninteresting thing when someone decides like, hey, we need a new minor version or a new patch version on the main, like that kind of thing, which I imagine it's mostly going to be new minor versions, right? For this group to be thinking about considering. But I just want to make sure we're no longer in a weird seesaw of that execution.
Yep, fair. We can sync up and chat about that a bit more. We'll do that after. Cool. Any other questions?
Yeah. Wrap that first.
All right, no other questions. Cool. Derek.
Cool.
You.
Short update on this one, which is nothing. Chris hasn't reached out to me about the availability of that project infrastructure within the CFF yet. So it's not ready for us to migrate the actual physical resources. Working on migrating the DNS pieces. So essentially, the Linux Foundation has the GitHub access and the bits there. The next piece is the DNS records and some of the other signatory stuff that I don't do because I'm not that for the company. But those are moving. They're not. They're just slow, and they're not things I control. So I will keep pressing on those, and then I'll send another message to Chris and see if there's been any movement on the GCP deals he was hoping to get in place before moving this stuff over. But
cool.
He didn't tell me that it was already ready, so I assumed it wasn't ready.
Gotcha. Kind of actually the only kind of one pain that I want to call out just around like the current project infrastructure is the lack of PR tagged workers that we have right now.
So you need more. Yeah, we could probably add some more. I could add one.
Yeah, because there's only one right now.
Yeah.
To get things kind of going through at a stable clip, I've had to like really like I'll literally have tabs open with PRs kind of queued up, just waiting to go. Because yeah, as soon as like 2 or more PRs are like actively like pushing commits at the same time, that one little worker is just struggling through. And like like usually the tests like run to completion, but most of the time they end up flaking because of CPU contention. It's just sad times. I'm just hitting rerun.
Yeah, I thought the PR worker was like a little kind to itself in that way, where it tried to run a bunch of those things in serial. Is that not true?
It was. I made it even more serial because there was a couple jobs that like weren't part of like the serial group. I made all the jobs serial, so now only one job at a time runs. And there is already still like I think the cluster itself already has like 1 or 2 active tasks per worker or something really low like that, which is appropriate for like all the tests and stuff that we run because they are usually quite heavy.
Fairly heavy. Yeah, they're not cheapies.
No, they chew up a lot of CPU and memory. But yeah, if that's something you can help alleviate in the short term, that'd be super useful. Even just getting it to like 2 or 3 workers would be a big help
Is this more of a vertical scaling problem for this worker or horizontal? Typically,
Horizontal.
would you say? Horizontal?
Horizontal. Yeah, you need
Okay.
more. You need more
Okay.
workers.
Okay. Cool.
Cool. All right. I think that's all the agenda items. Is there any other miscellaneous topics that or questions that people have on their mind or something they want to bring up?
Yeah, I guess more or less the situation is gonna be around 7:13, and as soon as we start, I guess we can message in the Discord channel of the working group some results and what's happening from our side. Yeah, we'll definitely keep you posted on that one.
Cool.
I had
All
a
right then.
question. About your CI/CD about the new release. So from the last release, I think you had some problems with Windows Worker. I don't think you have even a Windows testing environment. I was wondering. So what's the way forward now? So do you test the Windows stuff
I have a
locally on
Windows
your
There,
worker.
there,
Yeah.
there's a Windows worker. There was an issue of 7.12 because that's when I had gone like full like Wild West cowboy and everything, and I was like running the cluster on Hetzner, and I wasn't gonna try and run a Windows server on Hetzner there, so I had to like just be like,
Yeah, it was
sorry,
yeah, it was the
yeah,
OSS Concourse. Yeah, okay.
yeah.
I
So that's
remember.
all. But know if everything back on the GCP Broadcom infrastructure, there's a Windows worker, there's Windows testing that happens, so we don't have to worry about that being a gap
There's no
anymore.
Mac worker to be clear anymore. But it cross compiles anyways. So and like
It's gonna be interesting to see if there's a use case somewhere in the world of. I guess there probably is a Concourse with a Mac worker.
There was someone a couple months
there
ago who
was.
was like, I'm trying to run a web node on Mac OS, which actually kind of revealed the thing that I don't think the web command works properly for non Linux environments, which I was like, oh, interesting. But yeah, I think you may be the first person who ever tried to run a web node directly on a Mac.
Yeah, everyone
But
was
yeah,
maybe a worker because you had to do, I don't know, Mac OS specific things, right?
yep,
But yeah,
that was
there's
it.
no container. Yeah. Anyways.
Yeah.
Maybe another question that comes to mind is about I think that for now I don't have access to see most of the pipeline. So I see the Concourse pipeline still, which is public, I guess, but I cannot see in detail anything other. So for example, the DEX pipeline or the other stuff.
Yeah, as those pipelines are made, they are not public. You're supposed to be part of like the contributor team. But that whole process of even joining that contributor team is like a little bit broken right now. But I guess like we had discussed in the last meeting that for now out of band we can just kind of like work around that stuff. So I can actually just make sure that you guys specifically are able to see those teams. I believe the team is called contributor in the Concourse org, so we can just go ahead and just like add you guys there, so that way you can see the pipelines and stuff.
At least so a while back, so maybe half a year ago, I did join a contributing team. I'm not sure which team specifically, but then I was able to see the PR pipelines and I'm able to retrigger my jobs when they fail or flake out, but I still cannot see the other stuff in the concourse, just
Oh, the
visually.
main. So you can see the PRs. You're saying you can't see the
Yeah, I can see the PRs and I can even retrigger my PR job, so I do have access for that. I cannot see anything in the main pipeline, in the main team that's not public or any of the other teams if there are other teams, except for
and
the
that
contributing PR.
yeah, for what it's worth, that was the intent of the design, right? Is contributors had the ability to view the public pipelines, right? And the parts of the pipeline that were public on the main, and then update their own PRs and manage those. But not see all the other skunkworks that runs behind the scenes, because some of it's like updating the pipeline, like it itself, right? Which is a little bit more core maintainer, not contributor, right? Like that was kind of like the differentiator there.
Yeah,
I
that's
would, yeah, I'd prefer to not move past that model until we get off some of the current infrastructure variants that we're on and move into a purely CFF space.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. So my question was because so 6 months ago when we had this discussion, I was misinterpreting maybe some of the messages that once I joined the contributors, I would see the DEX pipeline or some of the other stuff that we were contributing regarding for so specifically, but it's totally fine. So we do have communication channels, and if we do need something specifically for that, I can ping you guys. In any way, Taylor did the DEX update, so I wasn't able to help out with that, but yeah, still.
Yeah, still, you put it on my radar, so I was aware that it needed to happen. There's always a lot of things that need to happen, so it helps when you guys just like ping me or something. It just helps to get on my to-do list. All right. Anything else?
Yep, maybe for the research types you mentioned, if it's something that's pretty straightforward or not that complex architecturally, we can take a look as well and join if you need assistance. So if you just have a bunch of stuff and not exactly to split yourself in 5 directions. So if you want to, you can share if something is not that specific or yeah, requires that much background knowledge on the resource type itself.
Yeah, sure. That might be a whole other thing, trying to figure out how to share workloads and stuff. Like at that point, I'm like, yeah, can someone hire a PM, please, so they can groom a backlog for us now? But if there's anything like very simple or obvious, and you guys are open to it, maybe I'll just like throw it in the Discord channel. If I'm like, hey, someone want to pick this up, try and get this done, I'll try and do that. There's like a nice little middle ground there. All right. Anything else? No? All right, then. We're done, folks.
Thank you, folks.
Thanks,
Appreciate
guys,
it.
and thanks for all the efforts.
Bye.